is threatened like never before. Are they about to disclose advanced high-tech ruins under the ice in Antarctica and a limited secret space program to try to save the New World Order agenda? This is some of the most surprising, fascinating, and relevant inside intel we have ever posted. Multiple groups have urged us to get this out as fast as possible, and here we are. The story is so incredible that you may need to just treat it like a sci-fi movie. But even if that's the only level you can accept it at, you should still find this to be a most fascinating read. Introduction by David Wilcock. The truth is exploding across the internet. Millions are learning for the first time that there really is a negative elite running the planet, engaging in child trafficking, among other heinous crimes. The cabal's brazen attempts to completely destroy this information are quite surprising to the millions who are only now discovering the scope of the problem. Although this information is extremely disturbing, it is also true. The only way we can heal as a planet is to face it and deal with it, individually and collectively. Part 1 of Endgame has spread more quickly than anything we've ever written before, getting its first 100,000 views in less than 31 hours, hitting 180,000 in 5 days, and topping 10,000 Facebook likes. Perhaps not surprisingly, my David Wilcock's page was completely deleted off of Wikipedia after publishing this expose. It was always heavily compromised, but now it doesn't exist. Our goal in Part 1 was to create a unified resource of information to show how rapidly the Cabal, New World Order, Illuminati's whole agenda is plummeting. Even if you have read and understood the data in Part 1, you still have only identified one small and very negative aspect of the big picture. The full story is much deeper than most people could even imagine, and reads like an epic series of sci-fi novels, with great surprises in each new volume. Cosmic disclosure is not fake news. If you are a viewer of our weekly Gaia show Cosmic Disclosure, or have been following previous updates on Corey Goode's intel, then you are already familiar with this new reality. Corey's experiences are so highly bizarre that most people identifying as skeptics couldn't even follow us more than 10% of the way, if that. Nonetheless, Corey's intel has checked out with what many, many other high-level sources have leaked to me over 20 years of time. The truth is extremely surprising and complex. The intel also dovetails beautifully with the material in the Law of One series, which I've scientifically validated in 3 different published books with over 2,200 total references. The Cabal has now taken the incredibly brazen step of blacklisting 200 highly popular sites, including Gaia, our main portal for Disclosure TV episodes. They are using Google, Facebook, Apple, Snapchat, and other assets to prevent you from ever being able to find these sites, even if your friends wanted you to see them. YouTube has begun aggressively taking down every person posting videos on this scandal, including all 3 we mentioned in Part 1, David Seaman, Reality Calls, and the Alex Jones video. This is the work of a third world fascist dictatorship, hardly what we would expect in a democracy. If this was truly all just a big misunderstanding, why are they being so aggressive? Why block Gaia? Why would Gaia have made it onto the short list of 200 Cabal-banned sites if Cosmic Disclosure was just a big joke? How did we end up threatening the media elite enough that they literally do not want you to have any chance of finding it, even if your friends sent you the link on Facebook or Gmail? From the world we are working within, the answer is simple. Child trafficking and spirit cooking at the highest political levels is still just the very beginning. The whole subject of UFOs, ancient civilizations, advanced technology, and ETs has been strictly controlled by this very negative cabal. Much of this classified information is incredibly positive and uplifting, including the idea of an imminent mass human evolution that many refer to as ascension. The Cabal is the proverbial dragon guarding the pile of gold and treasure, and the gorgeous virgin being held prisoner. If this group wasn't restricting our access to information, we would be living in a vastly more interesting world right now, with much greater technology. Is Corey telling the truth? By working around Corey for an average of 1 out of every 6 weeks over the last 2 years, I have seen ample evidence that he is telling the truth, as he has seen and experienced it. We have endured death threats, betrayal, financial hardship, and incredibly toxic abuse. This journey has not at all been fun or easy for him, nor for me. This is a spiritual war, not just a physical one. The Cabal is messing around with very real forces that are extremely negative and can influence those around us. It is all too easy to make mistakes and authorize attacks to come your way from these same forces. In my case, it comes mainly through the interference of others. This has been extremely difficult and exhausting, but it all reads as fairly mundane stuff in the worldly sense. In Corey's case, he has had very horrible physical experiences that most would consider paranormal, including being abducted by various human or ET groups. The only way we can protect ourselves is to try to have as positive and loving of an attitude as possible. Nothing else is sufficient. It is a moment-by-moment discipline. 5 different group categories, all requesting assistance. We also have 5 different major categories of groups that are now feeding us intel and requesting our assistance. We will learn more about each of them as this update goes on. Each of these groups is fighting as hard as they can to transform our planet, and have suffered horrible casualties along the way. Number 1, the Earth Alliance. This is the group Dr. Pachenik spoke on behalf of in Part 1. It is comprised of brave fighters in all 15 of the U.S. intelligence agencies and many international factions. Number 2, the MIC-SSP, Military Industrial Complex Secret Space Program. This is a series of factions that believed they were the only game in town, up until recently. They are about to be publicly revealed. Number 3, the SSP Alliance. This is a breakaway group within an SSP that is much more advanced than the MIC version. The SSP is controlled by the Cabal, but the SSP Alliance is definitely not. Number 4, the Inner Earth Alliance. There are several different human ET civilizations living in huge caverns beneath the Earth's surface. Each racial type we see on Earth appears in these groups. Number 5, the Sphere Being Alliance. This is a group of super advanced ETs that have been called the Guardians and manage the spiritual and physical affairs of entire solar systems. It is not easy to have requests consistently coming at us from all 5 of these different groups, with the message always being that each new piece of intel is extremely urgent to disclose. We keep getting pounded with obstacles and challenges while trying to navigate and meet these expectations. Despite periodic lapses in both of our productivity levels, Cosmic Disclosure has continued to come out with a new episode every week, uninterrupted. We are now under direct attack by the Cabal, as they are trying to wipe us out of existence with a total internet blackout. Gaia has several weekly shows with more on the way, as well as over 7,000 unique pieces of inspirational and truth-telling media to watch. The speed and function of the Gaia site has improved considerably, and if you have ever thought about signing up for $10 a month, we need you now. Thanks. With AirPlay, an inexpensive Roku box, a Google Play, a PlayStation, or an Xbox, you can watch it on your big screen TV in crisp, clean HD and hardly any delays. The Cabal's final salvage plan. What we are hearing from various insiders now is that the Cabal is on the verge of total defeat for the first time in our entire global history. The Alliance has become ever increasingly powerful as more and more people defect to it. The Cabal knows they are out of time, and as of right now they have largely completed their negotiations on how they will surrender. At the same time, the Cabal has dirt on the Earth Alliance that they do not want to see go public. Therefore, it is turned into more of a truce, where we will get part but not all of the truth. This is what we have been calling partial disclosure. We are against this happening, and will continue fighting for full disclosure, which will be much better for everyone. Hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people are aware of what we've disclosed, and no one has freaked out about any of it. The excuse that you can't handle the truth is nonsense. The SSP Alliance, Inner Earth Alliance, and Sphere Being Alliance are all pushing for full disclosure as well, which they call the optimal temporal reality for our future. What is partial disclosure shaping up to look like? The partial disclosure plan includes some admission of wrongdoing, an outing and punishing of mid-level people, and a beneficial global financial reset. The cosmic aspect of the plan appears to involve 3 key revelations, perhaps in different stages. Number 1, a formal public disclosure of the MIC SSP. They have 2 large cloaked orbital platforms, flying black triangle craft, and the ability to travel throughout our solar system. Number 2, the unveiling of ancient high-tech ruins in Antarctica that have been newly excavated. This will prove that Atlantis was very real and far more advanced than we thought. Number 3, the revealing of extremely ancient ruins over 1.8 billion with a B years old, within the Earth and throughout our solar system, often made of a crystalline, transparent aluminum alloy. Although this sounds pretty awesome and would be a great leap forward, this is still only a partial disclosure that leaves gaping holes in our understanding. Another potential plan that is in the optional category involves the possible disclosure of a single ET group known as the Tall Whites. This is the group that Charles Hall and others have met up with. The Cabal might try to introduce us to this group, explain they have been around for a really long time, and hope that they can get us to follow a mystical new religion offered by these beings. This would definitely not be in humanity's best interest. The rapidly escalating downfall of high-level elite human trafficking rings is bringing these issues to the immediate forefront. The Cabal has run out of time, and they know it. For many years, they have planned on using a partial disclosure to distract and inspire the public if the full nature of their crimes were to become known. The details have all been laid out. Much of the history and scientific research to support this data, as well as the full disclosure version, was written into my new book, The Ascension Mysteries, in an effort to help the Alliance groups. The partial disclosure scenario may not include any active ET life operating around us today. The MIC SSP's party line will be that apart from ancient visitors, or perhaps an occasional gray or tall white, we are alone. The first 2 episodes of the recently rebooted X-Files TV show were a veritable blueprint for the partial disclosure of the military-industrial complex's secret space program and its entire belief system. The MIC SSP does not have the technology to travel outside our solar system, so we would still be kept in a box, just a slightly larger version. The SSP has much greater technology that could heal our planet. The Cabal could still secretly pursue their depopulation agenda as the partial disclosure unfolded over a 50 to 100 year period. The Cabal is hoping to rebrand itself as the good guys as this partial disclosure scenario rolls out. It is their last and only chance to save their agenda. Without further ado, I will hand the microphone over to Corey, who will continue our story from here with my co-authored input. It is well worth your time to learn about what is going on. The Secret Space Program. by Corey Goode with David Wilcock. Narrated by David Wilcock. By now you are probably aware that I, Corey Goode, am a 20-year veteran of a secret space program, SSP, that has technology vastly superior to anything we see in the open world. David Wilcock had been gathering a variety of insider testimonies for nearly 20 years when I began disclosing everything I knew to him in October 2014. He was able to validate my testimony by having heard many of the same things from other high-level insiders at cosmic top-secret level and above. The majority of this insider testimony was completely off the public record and did not appear anywhere online, nor in any alleged fiction in the public domain. There were so many points of correlation that we stopped counting somewhere after identifying about 60 different highly specific examples. David's knowledge of hyper-classified intel similarly convinced me that he was in contact with people who had experienced the same world that I had. He gained these contacts through being a highly public scholar in UFOs and alternative science who had proven over many years that he could be entrusted with confidentiality. It is hard to imagine. The level of secrecy involved is so high that it is hard for most people to even begin to imagine the world of the SSP. An experience inside a true SSP base on Earth or elsewhere in our solar system would appear very similar to a scene from the movie Men in Black or Guardians of the Galaxy. An ever-increasing number of seemingly fictional movies, television shows, and video games are preparing us for an eventual disclosure. Some groups on Earth have been aware that we are not alone and have remained in active contact with extraterrestrials for thousands of years. Many more became involved when the Germans developed flying saucer technology with ET assistance in the 1930s. A vastly interconnected breakaway civilization has since developed, almost completely without any public awareness. William Tompkins independently validates. William Tompkins was unaware of me or any of my testimony when he wrote Selected by Extraterrestrials. Ours has strictly been an internet-based story, and Tompkins is a 94-year-old veteran who is not online. During World War II, he debriefed 29 different U.S. spies embedded in the German SSP at the time. There are many astonishing points of correlation between what the two of us are saying, again, far beyond any likelihood of chance. Interviews with Tompkins were conducted for Gaia before he knew anything about my testimony, but it all lines up beautifully. There are several episodes where we compare these knowledge bases, and the results are very surprising. Contact was reawakened. I had basically been out of the loop in the SSP since the late 1980s, except for a number of encounters with them in the 1990s and early 2000s that were all very brief missions. Much to my surprise, I was brought back into this world approximately 4 months after David and I began comparing notes. I was taken to a base on the moon that I was already familiar with, entitled the Lunar Operations Command, or LOC. By this point, David had gathered the bulk of my testimony together and had thoroughly briefed the senior management of Gaia on the story. I was quite surprised to discover that an alliance had formed within the SSP that wanted to share their remarkable technology with the general population of Earth. This alliance partially arose out of the SSP faction I worked within, known as Solar Warden. There are a total of 5 different SSP factions, and Solar Warden is made up of members from all 5 of them. The Solar Warden code name was also discovered by the hacker Gary McKinnon and was independently verified by William Tompkins. Sphere Being Alliance Ambassador. The SSP is already engaged with a diverse community of over 900 different human-like civilizations that they have regular, ongoing trade with, as well as less frequent contact with many others. I became a conduit for the SSP Alliance to speak with a group of highly powerful, positive ETs that had remained mysterious up until then. These beings arrived in hundreds of gigantic spheres parked throughout our solar system. The spheres have been coming in since the late 1990s and have remained cloaked ever since. David was aware of the spheres ever since they first arrived, as they were often being seen on NASA's own SOHO satellite and were referred to as sun cruisers. No other ET group had anything that was anywhere near this large in size, so it naturally was quite a source of interest. Gonzalez was the key. The man on the inside who ended up bringing me into this world again has been given the pseudonym Lieutenant Colonel Gonzalez for security reasons. He had experienced in-person contact with the sphere beings while in the SSP at about the same time I had experienced similar contacts while living here in America. Gonzalez did not report these encounters up the chain of command for some time, nor did I tell anyone about what I had experienced. In late February 2015, the sphere beings asked for me by name through Gonzalez. He did not know who I was, and his superiors had to look me up and figure it out. Up until I was requested by name, the sphere beings had completely refused to interact with the SSP Alliance, even though the Alliance felt they were trying to do something positive for humanity. The negative ETs will seek out contact with the most wealthy, powerful elites on Earth to promote their tyrannical, dictatorial, service-to-self message. The positive ETs seek contact with those who can help share their message of love, peace, and service to others. Thrown in the middle. I effectively got thrown into the middle of a debate between the SSP Alliance and the sphere beings. Furthermore, the sphere beings wanted me to serve as their ambassador, sharing their perspective not just with the SSP Alliance, but with the general public on Earth. They are here to help guide us through an epic human evolutionary event that many call ascension. I have been told this will involve a massive release of energy from the sun that triggers advancements in DNA and consciousness. Wilcock's new book, The Ascension Mysteries, has references to ancient prophecies of such an event from many different cultures. The giant spheres are a form of living technology that is used to help smooth out this transition as much as possible. Without the help of the spheres, such a transition would likely be catastrophic and largely unpredictable. The Blue Avians. The main ET group I've interacted with has been the Blue Avians, a race of humanoids with large eyes and bird-like blue feathers on their bodies. We have since discovered that this is the same group that presented itself to the Egyptians through avian-looking humanoid gods such as Ra and possibly also Thoth. Their originally positive teachings were greatly distorted into the negative, as was described in the Law of One series. William Henry found ancient depictions of blue avians in Egyptian and other cultures, as reported in Cosmic Disclosure. Bird-headed humanoids are seen in Babylonian and South American inscriptions, as well as those of Egypt. Certain Bible passages describe Archangel Gabriel as having a bird-like appearance. Native American cultures also reported contact with the bird tribes, and the Japanese had the Tengu birdmen of the mountains. The Blue Avians are one of 5 mysterious, highly advanced ET races that are associated with the giant spheres. The Law of One series. Additionally, the Blue Avians have now absolutely confirmed that they were responsible for the creation of the Law of One series from 1981 to 1984. This was a series of 106 question and answer sessions between a PhD physicist and ufologist and an extraterrestrial intelligence communicating telepathically through Carla Ruckert. David had been studying the Law of One material heavily since 1996 and had already written 2 New York Times best-selling books on its complex science before we ever started talking. With that being said, the main Blue Avian I am in contact with, Ra Tir Air, has given us a warning about quoting from the Law of One as if it were a religion. He said many people are starting to quote chapter and verse from it and use it as a belief system that all new information has to meld with or be questioned and possibly rejected. They made it clear that there are certain distortions in the Law of One material that came from the people at L&L Research who presented it. If we make it into a bedrock belief system, it can create a personal religion that can be damaging for the individual in their emotional and spiritual evolution. Ultimately, we must all exercise our own discernment and choose for ourselves what the truth is, without ever worshiping any particular document or source. Telepathic contacts. It is also important to note that David has had telepathic contact with these same beings, such as through nightly dream analysis, ever since November 10th, 1996. Due to cosmic laws of free will, David has still never experienced the type of in-person contacts that are now happening to me. He has been given a roadmap of stages to go through that could lead to these contacts, and writing his new book, Awakening in the Dream, appears to be one key part of that process. Since I had already been a part of the SSP in the 1980s, it did not violate my free will to be brought back into it later in life. This almost obsessive focus with preserving free will is a regular element of every session of the Law of One series. Complex and multifaceted. This story is complex and multifaceted, far beyond anything I would ever dream of trying to invent. This has also not been a profitable move for me to make. I would have had a significantly higher income if I was able to go back into the IT field instead of continuing to fight for full disclosure, as I am now doing. In the course of this work as an ambassador, I have come face to face with the highest levels of both the positive and the negative sides of this battle. Some of these experiences have been so profoundly unpleasant that I can only laugh when people say they wish they could be in my shoes. The full narrative arc has been traced out in Cosmic Disclosure, our show on Gaia, as well as in these updates at spherebeingalliance.com and at David's website, divinecosmos.com. Various characters in the story. I have also met up with an alliance of human-looking beings living in huge habitable caverns inside the Earth. My main contact therein is a priestess named Kari. As described in previous updates, I also recently was introduced to an ambassador from a planet in a nearby star system that recently overthrew their own negative ET-driven tyranny. His name is Ambassador Mika. They are now working predominantly through dream contacts to help educate us on how to achieve our own freedom from these malevolent beings. Lieutenant Commander Gonzalez was my original contact with the SSP Alliance, and he continues to pass along intel at this time, as seen below. He originally presented himself as a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. This was his cover ID, and I recently found out he was actually a lieutenant commander in the Navy. Lastly, I have been interacting with a more Earth-based SSP that is run by the Military Industrial Complex, MIC. The MIC SSP is unaware of the greater space program I was a part of, as we will discuss. So now, without further ado, we will pick up where we left off in the previous update at spherebeingalliance.com and in prior episodes of Cosmic Disclosure. A visit from the MIC SSP. Once again, in the early morning hours of Wednesday, October 26, 2016, I awoke to find that I was walking in the parking lot behind my house. This type of sleepwalking technology is standard fare for the Military Industrial Complex MIC Space Program Group that has been contacting me in the recent past. I immediately noticed the same stealth-looking MIC wingless craft that I was taken in last time. It was parked in the same place it had been in the last time I was taken. The same two airmen greeted me and asked me if I was physically able to walk up the stairs. Since I had almost fallen after my knee buckled the last time they contacted me, they seemed as though they were being overly cautious. I went up the stairs, entered the craft, and was brought to the familiar room where I had been chemically interrogated before. This naturally caused me to feel extreme anxiety, since the original interrogations I went through were not pleasant, to say the least. I was asked to sit in the same seat and was buckled in. Once again, I was helpless, shackled into the same chair where I had suffered greatly in the past. I soon heard the craft power up, and we lifted off fairly quickly. A visit from Sigmund. A few minutes later, the older military man who was in charge came into the room. Since he has white hair and a white goatee, we have decided to call him Sigmund in an homage to Freud. Sigmund stated that he was a bit perplexed at the information he had received from our last encounter. In addition to enhanced interrogation through chemicals and technology, he had previously taken blood, hair, and skin samples and tested them for trace elements, using very advanced methods. The lab results once again confirmed that I had been in the approximate off-planet locations that I had claimed. The MIC space program people do not have any intelligence suggesting I had ever actually visited these locations. I was never a part of their program. For this same reason, Sigmund clearly could not believe what he was seeing. My tests proved beyond any shadow of doubt that there was much more to the secret space program than he knew. As a high-ranking superior officer, this naturally came as quite a shock to him. He was led to believe that he had access to all relevant compartments of the classified world. The MIC are not the only game in town. The people in the MIC space program have been taught that theirs is the only one that exists. They believe they are the top of the crop, the best of the best, the be-all and end-all. Since there is a plan in place to disclose their existence, we will now reveal as much about them as possible, so you can get a sense of what they do and don't know. They are aware of the existence of Luciferian cabal groups, practicing very advanced black magic on a global scale. This includes exacting protocols of performing specific ceremonies at specific times. It also involves hiding out in the open and telling us what they are doing in symbolic form. Events like the Grammy Awards, the Super Bowl halftime show, or the Olympics opening and closing ceremonies are used to broadcast occult images to millions of people. This, in turn, authorizes the negative forces they are working with to exact greater control over the earth and enhance their worldly power, as long as no widespread resistance develops. They do this through seeding our co-creative consciousness with their agenda. Our collective focus is the root power of their magic. The MIC people often believe that they are literally engaged in a biblical war against an ancient evil that has taken control of much of the earth. Advanced technology from our worldly perspective. The MIC SSP has at least 2 large space stations in Earth's orbit, as well as a number of manned satellites. They are roughly circular in shape and are large space stations with enough facilities for many people to work in various labs and so forth. They are also reported by insiders to possess floating aircraft carriers that look exactly the same as what we saw in the Avengers and Captain America: The Winter Soldier. They have black triangular craft that can travel around our solar system, as well as other stealth-looking varieties. This technology makes them feel that if anything else was going on in our solar system, they would be able to see it. When they see the crafts from other programs or of any of a number of ET races, they are simply told that these craft are ours. They are told that they are not on a need-to-know basis about that particular program and not to speak about their sighting with anyone. It is very compartmentalized. The Cabal is a very, very intelligent group. They built the MIC SSP from the very beginning to be disclosed at some point as a protective deception to hide the deeper-level secret space program. If anyone in the military-industrial complex secret space program ranks made unwanted technological or informational breakthroughs, they would be quietly plucked out, just as occurs here in our own level of the cover-up. Therefore, no one in the MIC secret space program will successfully discover portals that take them outside our solar system, as one of many examples. Certain areas are cordoned off to them as no-fly zones, so they do not see the advanced ET civilizations that already exist in our solar system. If someone sees something they shouldn't have, and the idea that it is one of ours doesn't stick, they very likely would disappear, or be reassigned. The Cabal knew that if the people in the MIC SSP truly believed what they were being told was the whole and complete truth, none of them could ever threaten the partial disclosure scenario. They could come forward and fight vigorously against any alternative view of reality because they believed in their heart and soul that they had been given the whole and complete truth. This is precisely what was happening with Sigmund, the commanding MIC officer who interrogated me, as we will review in a minute. They believe we are alone. The MIC SSP are told that we cannot travel outside our solar system. This is due to gravitational and energetic conditions at the boundary of our heliosphere that make any escape impossible with their current technology. NASA has already revealed gravitational anomalies with our Pioneer deep space probes as they travel closer to the boundary of our solar system, setting the stage for this announcement. The MIC folks are also told that there is no need for us to go anywhere else, as we are already surrounded by an embarrassment of riches beyond our wildest dreams. There are many impressive prehistoric intelligent ruins to explore here, from what they call the Ancient Builder Race. The oldest of these ruins date back more than 1.8 billion with a B years. Most of their members believe that any ETs have long since come and gone from our solar system. The only exception is time travelers from Earth's own future who have come back and visited us. Different levels of knowledge, depending upon the group. The MIC Secret Space Program is made up of different military and intelligence groups that have varying levels of knowledge of ETs. Some think there are only 4 or 5 groups visiting us. Some don't think any have been here for thousands of years. The top brass of each branch have basic knowledge of 50 plus other ET groups that have visited us. This knowledge goes back to the 60s and was standard info in the briefings then for NATO and the DoD, etc. It is much more complex than can be summarized in a paragraph or two. The mid-level narrative. The mid-level personnel have been told that some humans who have time-traveled here from our own future now look like Greys. This is due to evolutionary changes from having lived underground for thousands of years. One of the partial disclosure narratives was designed to focus on this idea, namely that all the human-looking and gray-looking ETs come from competing timelines in our future. The higher-ups usually know about a handful of ETs that are here now, but they are ordered to keep silent about it. Some MIC Secret Space Program groups believe that we are all the blood descendants to varying degrees of pre-Atlantean human ET refugees that they call the pre-Adamites, as we will discuss. This is also a key feature of the belief systems of the various Cabal groups at the higher levels. The Cabal groups believe they have significantly more pre-Adamite blood than the rest of us, and formed royal bloodlines and elite ruling castes as a result. Energetic changes in our solar system. As Wilcock revealed in The Ascension Mysteries, one of his insiders has worked with the MIC Secret Space Program and has been thoroughly educated in their views as we are explaining them here. The MIC SSP people are also aware that an energetic change is occurring in our solar system. They expect that this will lead to a massive release from the sun in our near future. The classic movie 2001 was intended to pave the way for the MIC program's eventual disclosure. If a sufficiently massive sighting or a well-publicized data dump from a whistleblower got traction in the mainstream media, the MIC Secret Space Program could have been revealed many years earlier. 2001 and 2010 installed all the key pieces of information we would be told over time in the aftermath of that eventual disclosure. If you try to explain to the MIC Secret Space Program that a much more advanced secret space program is operating around them, it is akin to blaspheming a major religion in front of its devoted followers. Pre-Adamites in the ice. Now let's return to our scene where I am now on the MIC Secret Space Program craft, hearing what Sigmund was telling me. Sigmund revealed that he had been stationed at several classified military installations in Antarctica. He had spent time in the very area where the Anshar Inner Earth group had taken me on a reconnaissance flight. He stated that an extremely ancient series of cities had been discovered flash frozen deep under the ice shelf. He confirmed that there were also many animals and pre-Adamites preserved in the ice. He described the pre-Adamites as beings with elongated skulls, with strangely proportioned bodies that were obviously not designed for Earth's gravity and atmospheric pressure. When we combine this with what Gonzalez told me earlier, and the academic research David compiled in the Ascension Mysteries, it does appear that some of these groups were giants by our standards. Other hybrid groups may have been bred to have more conventional heights and or adapted to Earth's gravity over time by becoming shorter. The history of the pre-Adamites. According to Sigmund, this pre-Adamite group had apparently arrived here from another planet in our solar system that was no longer hospitable. They arrived here approximately 55,000 to 65,000 years ago and began to create hybrids of their species and the developing human population. This fit beautifully with what Gonzalez and others had already disclosed, which in turn became the central narrative of the second half of David's The Ascension Mysteries. What we now see as Antarctica was the seemingly mythical lost island of Atlantis. The Buwachi map from 1754 depicts accurate subglacial topography of Antarctica. No one in modern times even saw the continent itself until 1820. Insiders tell us the Buwachi, Orontius, Phineas, and other maps were copied over from ancient scrolls in the Vatican Library. The Earth shifted on its rotational axis, perhaps due to a nuclear war, and the water that inundated the continent quickly flash froze into a gigantic ice shelf. Sigmund stated that the hybrid survivors of this catastrophe, who were living on other continents at the time of the Great Flood, completely lost access to their ancient cities for over 10,000 years. These beings then began to breed with the human populations in the regions they were stationed in at the time of the disaster. One major faction of pre-Adamites was constrained to the Americas, while the other survived in Europe, Africa, and Asia. Tompkins, Aldrin, the Draco, and Antarctica. The 29 embedded German spies Tompkins interviewed during World War II confirmed the Nazis were working with a violent, aggressive reptilian race. This group is humanoid, but with reptilian features. They have been called the Saurians or the Draco, and pose the biggest problem for everyone in our region of the galaxy. Surprisingly, the Draco have a central base of operations in our solar system, including huge under-ice facilities in Antarctica. This makes Buzz Aldrin's latest alleged tweet extremely interesting. We do now know that this tweet was disinformation, but the contents are still important to analyze. We can prove that he had just visited Antarctica while wearing a shirt encouraging us to get to Mars ASAP. We did hear that he was there to tour the pre-Adamite ruins that are now on the verge of being disclosed to us as part of this transition plan. Aldrin fell ill and had to be returned home. The disinfo begins with him allegedly tweeting a pic of an alleged Antarctic pyramid with the words, "We are all in danger. It is evil itself." If this had actually been real and not another internet hoax, it strongly suggested that he was briefed on the existence of the Draco, perhaps off the record, and it nearly gave him a heart attack. Excavation has finally been allowed. My contacts in the SSP Alliance revealed that the Draco have finally allowed the U.S. to excavate new pre-Adamite archaeological sites under the Antarctic ice. They have also granted permission for the small number of surviving pre-Adamites to access these areas once again. These pre-Adamite people look and sound just like us, except that they have elongated skulls that they must keep hidden if they are ever seen in public. David asked me how many of these people still live on Earth. As of now, I do not have any clear intel on their numbers, but it is likely in the thousands, if not more. The amount of ancient technology and information that has been found preserved in huge libraries under the Antarctic ice is staggering. He finally became convinced. I was listening to Sigmund telling me his version of the story and watching his face as he shared the information. He noticed me looking at him and wondering why he was sharing this with me. This caused him to break off from the current topic. He then stated that the data they collected from me the last time we met had the telemetry that I had retained subconsciously from the reconnaissance flight under the ice. This finally convinced him that at least some of what I was saying was true. David asked me for clarification when I first wrote this. Specifically, I had witnessed information on the heads-up displays in the Anshar bus craft I was riding in. Under interrogation, I was able to recall specific telemetry from those displays that proved to be extremely accurate, enough to meet Sigmund's quality standards. Another round. Sigmund then stated that he was going to alter my state of consciousness again to be able to dig deeper into my experiences and see what else he could glean. I told him I would prefer it if he didn't. I would be happy to answer any questions he had. He ignored me and walked over to pick up a small device that had a metallic-looking cone at the end that looked like some sort of antenna. He then put in some sort of earplugs and turned the device on. I heard the same high-pitched noise that I had the last time. At this point, I lost consciousness, as has become the norm when this technology is used. Whatever conversation I have with Sigmund under the influence of this technology is not available to me after it is over. Leaving the craft and catching another ride. The next thing I am able to remember was walking back down the stairs of the craft with both airmen assisting me down the narrow stairs to the parking lot. I walked back home and went into my living room. A blue orb was zigzagging around as if it was waiting for me. This is a phenomenon that has been ongoing since this all started in February 2015. It is the transportation system used by the blue avians. Many people are starting to see blue or purple orbs just as I had been told would occur. This is a key part of our mass awakening process. I indicated that I was ready to be transported and was taken back to the same Mayan breakaway mothership I had been on before. Another meeting with the Mayans. The Mayan breakaway group started out in Mesoamerica, and thanks to a successful ET contact, they were able to migrate off-planet. They have since become advanced enough to develop a unique technology that appears to be based on the use of stone and consciousness. They act as a healing group that have provided treatment to Gonzalez and many other survivors of SSP enslavement and torture. There were now 6 of the Mayans in the room. 3 of them were females. I had only seen a female on one occasion before with any degree of closeness. Gonzalez was standing over by the floating stone console looking at it, while a Mayan was working the controls. He directed his attention to me and greeted me. He walked up and scanned me with the same black stone sphere that he held in his palm the last time. He smiled, and as he lifted it up, he said, "Please focus your attention on the magic 8-ball." He then scanned my head again while I tried to focus on the black stone sphere as he requested. Once he finished his scan, he turned and walked over to the floating console and somehow placed the stone sphere into the side of it. He then looked over at the Mayans. They then went into the next room where another stone console was floating and gave us some privacy. Seeding info into the MIC secret space program. Gonzalez stated that he was sorry he couldn't share some of the details about why I was being abducted and interrogated up until now. He stated that this was part of an operation that was seeding information into the ranks of this MIC secret space program. Apparently, many of them are disillusioned and questioning whether or not they were indeed at the top of the intelligence totem pole, as they had been led to believe. He stated that if this information gets to the right people within the MIC secret space program, it could hinder the wider plans of doing a partial disclosure of their program. These individuals now felt there was much more going on in the programs than they had been told. Gonzalez further communicated that I had to be unaware of this operation so the interrogators would not figure out this info was being given to them on purpose. I had assumed that a similar scenario was behind why I had been kept so completely in the dark about what was happening to me, and why all of this had been allowed to occur by the SSP Alliance and the Sphere Being Alliance. More on the pre-Adamites and Antarctica. Gonzalez and I then talked about the conversation I had on board the MIC Secret Space Program's craft regarding the pre-Adamites. Gonzalez confirmed that he had received the same intelligence from some of his SSP Alliance contacts. The same data also appeared in the reconnaissance flight telemetry that the Anshar had shared with him. Advanced tech in ancient ruins. Gonzalez soon moved to another topic. He stated that Cabal proxies had discovered pieces of ancient technologies hidden in time capsules in many of the ancient Sumerian ruins. These proxy agents completely razed these ancient ruins to the ground, looking for these time capsules. These groups not only found several pieces of technology inside the walls of these ruins, they also located some new sites buried below them that were much more ancient. He stated that these artifacts were being stored in Mosul, Iraq at the moment. He also stated that one of the reasons such a vigorous battle is occurring in Mosul at this time is because various groups are fighting to recover these artifacts. After these historical sites were destroyed, the Alliance sent operatives to other similar sites across the planet to do sonar scans and try to locate more of these time capsules. He stated that they were doing so in the dead of the night and were using very advanced technologies to try to detect other anomalies around these ancient sites. The pre-Adamites want control. According to Gonzalez, the ancient technologies that were discovered in Iraq had belonged to this pre-Adamite group. This group wants the return of these technical artifacts immediately, considering them to be their private and personal property. However, certain factions who are now in possession of them will not turn them over. These are Earth-human proxy groups that the Cabal had sent on behalf of the surviving pre-Adamites. They got the cosmic equivalent of gold lust when they saw the treasure. What further complicates matters is that there are two different royal bloodlines among these pre-Adamites. These two groups are in a type of competition over the control of the financial and political systems of various countries. As I have said before, the people we are now calling pre-Adamites all have psychopathic characteristics by our normal definition of the term. The elongated mitre hats everyone wears in the Vatican are one of the ways they have been able to conceal themselves while still operating amongst us. The surviving pre-Adamites apparently have blue eyes. A weakening of the Cabal coalition. Gonzalez stated that this argument over the pre-Adamite ruins meant there was an obvious weakening of the Cabal's coalition. This split in the ranks of these global syndicates was being exploited by the Alliance. It seems that many of these Cabal groups now see that their organization is about to be fully exposed and brought to justice. The disclosures David mentioned in Part 1 did not happen by chance. They are the direct result of the hard work of the Alliance through outlets like WikiLeaks. It appears that many of these people are positioning themselves to cooperate with the Alliance during the prosecution phase. This, of course, is a very helpful thing. David and I have both consistently stressed that whistleblowers should be seen as heroes. It is very important that we not devolve into a witch hunt mentality. Issues with memory. At this point, the stone console behind him started flashing symbols in various colors of light. He turned his attention to the control panel as I noticed two of the Mayans entering the room. All three of them walked to the floating stone console and observed the symbols appearing in an obvious sequence. He glanced over at me and asked me if I was still having issues with my memory. I stated that indeed I had noticed difficulty in remembering things such as my children's birth dates, etc. His forehead wrinkled up a bit. He said he wanted to consult the Mayans to see what type of help they could offer. He then smiled at me as a blue orb entered the room and zipped directly in front of my chest. He continued to smile as he waved goodbye. I was taken to my living room, where I again laid on the couch and fell asleep. Another encounter with the Banished. Over the next 2 days, I was trying to make sense of what had occurred. I attempted to meditate on the experiences to see if I could remember what had happened while I was being interrogated. On the following Saturday, however, I was completely distracted by another encounter with the banished female that had implanted entity attachments in me months earlier. This had been a highly unpleasant experience where I awoke to her being